I am a 35 years old female. I don't have the best relationship with my husband's mom. Since day one she tried to make remarks and compare me to her. She then tried to get on my good side and started overly praising everything I do and sometimes even copying me, like that one time when she dyed her hair purple just like mine, and when everyone pointed out how ridiculous she looked. She actually blamed me and accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So, anyways, my husband and I took 2 weeks off work to go visit some places out of the country, tourism in other words. Thing is, I was the one who saved up for and arranged for the trip. My husband was responsible for booking the tickets. My husband's mom wanted to come along and threw temper tantrums when I said no. She called, texted, sent people to talk to me into letting her come. Even threatened to call the police and make some complaint up to get us to stay if she can't come. My husband said we should just take her, but I told him he was wrong to tell her about the trip in the first place. He gave me an ultimatum. Said he wouldn't go if she can't come, and I told him I'd gladly call his bluff, which made him take his words back and say, fine. I will tell her to stop it because we won't take her. Things got quieter, suspiciously quieter. The day of the trip came and we got to the airport at 2 p.m. My husband was walking ahead of me and was looking left and right like he was looking for someone. I asked him, but he didn't respond. He led me to the waiting area, and first thing I saw was his mom standing there with her luggage. I froze in my spot. I felt a cold wave washing over me and I was fuming inside. She and my husband were hugging. That's when I quietly turned around and started walking towards the exit. My husband followed me while shouting at me to stop. He tried to stop me, but I told him off the harshest way possible. He tried to say I was overreacting and that his mom was there anyway and I should let it go and not mess the trip up for us. I told him he and his mom could still go and that I was going home. I went home and sobbed into my dog's fur for several minutes. Turned out he booked her a ticket without me knowing. An hour later he came home yelling and raging about how pathetic and spiteful I was to walk out and go home and ruin the trip last minute. I told him he caused this to happen. He said that I was being so hard on his mom, it's ridiculous. I refused to fight anymore, but he kept on berating me, then called my family to tell them that the trip was cancelled, and that it was because of me. My family said that I shouldn't have ruined it for myself and should have sucked it up and done my best to enjoy. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills back / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now, as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But it is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, He didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the first of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? I travel for work and my employer allows me to spend up to $100 / day on food. If I don't use it, I don't get to pocket the money. When traveling, I make sure to use the full $100 every day, so I'm eating very well. My wife is upset with me because I get to eat out for every meal at least 2 weeks a month. She says it isn't fair and I should just go to the grocery store and bring back food to my hotel. I've explained to her that it doesn't make sense since I don't get to keep the money if I don't use it. Every evening when I call her, she wants to know exactly what I ate. She can see the credit card statements reimbursed by employer, so she knows how much I spent. She'll see I spent $75 on dinner and start freaking out about how wasteful I am. I take her out for dinner at least 2 times a week when I'm in town, and she goes out several times a week with friends when I'm not in town. This whole thing just seems irrational, and it is really putting a strain on our relationship. I haven't gained any weight and am in great shape. I focus on quality of food much more than quantity. Most hotels have a small gym and / or a pool. I can't buy groceries or gift cards to bring home. It is against policy. I submit pictures of the receipts, so this wouldn't work. I track all my expenses and submit receipts for reimbursement weekly. I float the money for 7 days max. Usually I have around $3,000 to $4,000 in expenses per week, which we can make work without any issues since I pay for all my food, airfare, hotels, and car rentals myself. I collect an enormous amount of points and other perks. These points allow me to go on at least 2 vacations a year with my wife for next to nothing. We went to Spain early this year for 2 weeks and spent under $400 for the entire trip. Not using a company card is one of the best perks. Using a different credit card is not on the table. My wife and I have all our finances together. We both think it's important to be 100% transparent with money. We don't have any kids. She started a business selling Mary Kay a few years ago. She is working really hard to expand and find new customers. She likes the idea of being her own boss, and I try to do everything I can to support her. I'm rarely gone for 2 weeks at a time. Sometimes I'm gone for only 2 days. On average, a trip lasts 5 days and I go on 3 a month. A lot are saying Mary Kay is a pyramid scheme. I don't really know that much about the details of the business. I see a lot of women selling makeup, candles, and diet-related products, so I thought this was normal. We've put in around $50,000 over the past 2 years. Most of the money goes towards buying inventory and training seminars. I'll have to do some research to see what is going on. My day-to-day is anything but glamorous. I've spent more time in the airport than I even care to think about. Things go wrong often on the logistical side. My work can be very stressful, but I've gotten very good at managing the workload. My boss encourages us to use the full expense amount. He understands the stress involved traveling so much. He's actually working on increasing the amount to $140//day because of inflation. I am a 39 years old male, and I lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating, and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I wasn't offered any help, just words. They just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I've created an account for my son's college fund and kept putting whatever I could get at the time, and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I can't express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son and as a way to remember him, and we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mom agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to someone else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. Thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision, and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and ending up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mom calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure, and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this.